Hello and welcome to day 3 of NXT Digital. We really hope you've enjoyed the last 2 days and you've found inspiration in the topics that we've covered. Don't forget, if you have missed anything and you want to catch up, you can get all the content across all 3 days on our website. I'd recommend that alongside this session, you actually catch up on Chris Huntingford from Microsoft session, all about injecting a thunderbolt of awesome into your business with the Power Platform. He actually covers some similar topics to what we're going to talk to you about today. And he also covers some of the approach that Microsoft's got and provides some great insights around how the different technologies can help your business. In this session, Abby and I will be talking to you all about business processes and automation. And in the process, we really hope to dispel a misconception that this is all about automation and robots taking our jobs. That really isn't the case. Okay, looking back, pre-COVID, many organizations revolved around a place of work. And whilst they may have been moving to organization-wide remote and collaborative working practices, it wasn't always a priority. I suppose that doesn't mean that there was no remote working solution in place. I think for many organizations, they had something, but it just wasn't mature and potentially wasn't scalable when you're suddenly needing to support the majority of your workforce in a remote capacity. For us, COVID's really shone a light on the need for better user-centric technologies and more mature and more modern remote working practices. Business process automation and agile business processes was something that was talked about, and there were things that were kind of on the roadmap for organizations, but in reality, many organizations were still trying to understand the most effective way to deploy or even adopt products like Office 365, let alone wondering about how they're going to start to automate processes. Again, COVID's really driven up the demand for products like Teams and the Power Platform to enable rapid modernization, more productive workforces, and even resiliency in supply chains. The ability to work from home, whilst it may have been available, as a whole, it had quite a relatively small uptake. Only 12% of the economy worked from home pre-COVID. Since COVID, we've seen this rise to over 40%. I think it's nearer 50 plus at the moment. And Rizal is an organisation that have actually helped quite a large proportion of our client base with any range of remote working initiatives. And then more specific to the topic of this session, many organisations I've personally spoken to over the last 6 months have talked quite candidly about their overheads. An example being that they've employed some professional developers and quite big development teams to design and create bespoke applications and bespoke services that serve the business and their customers. And obviously those teams also would have used a variety of quite expensive products, and most would need quite expensive equipment as well. What COVID's done is it's caused many of those organisations to focus on reducing their overall costs, and we've been helping them turn their attention towards the benefits and the cost saving that's actually afforded to them by their existing investments. And in this specific scenario, things like low code app development, and that's again using platforms like the Microsoft Power Platform. And another key use for those platforms, for that specific platform, is that they can also be used to amplify those existing professional developer capabilities and can drive more productivity and more efficiency. There is a challenge though. So whilst the technology sector has continued to innovate and to progress, other sectors and industries have really failed to adopt those new technologies, which we've seen slow the growth of our economy, and it's really started to impact on the performance and in turn the profitability of our businesses. Many businesses today are finding that they've relied on outdated technologies and manual processes, which can really create a reduced visibility and an inefficiency even within the best of business climates. And when you start to think about disruption, similar to what we've experienced this year, when those things occur, it really can be disastrous. The recent shift to remote working, for example, has left significant room for risk. It's creating greater vulnerabilities when technology can just not catch up to the demand of both customers and workers. And as per the little image there, it really can feel like a chicken and egg situation. You've got customer and industry demand, which is outpacing how quickly technology and innovation can respond. And then the pace of technology in its own right is often too high for many to adopt it effectively. So more than ever, we're seeing change being a constant, and our ability to free up resource to focus on the human element is ever more critical. Automation really is a great way to reduce those manual tasks that cross organisations and free up staff to start focusing on being more proactive and focusing on areas that provide a greater return on investment to the business. And again, this really isn't about removing people from the business and cutting costs that way. It's more about finding ways that automation and agile business processes can make you more efficient as an organisation in these challenging times. We also find that when organisations focus on automation and redirecting those efforts, they can reduce those costs, but also drive more innovation and more speed through the business, which inevitably will open up new revenue streams, reduce time to market for new and updated services as well.
Okay, so I'm going to get you to take a step back and really think about how the current climate has impacted you and your way of working. Did you struggle to complete certain tasks, or were processes broken during this time? Obviously, we've seen a lot of change in circumstances over the last 6 to 8 months. We've got kids at home, we've got partners working in the same house. Where you weren't used to working remotely, you're having to work remotely, and you might not have access to some of the things that you used to in your day-to-day job, like printers or post. And we need to start thinking about areas of your role that could be improved, could be automated, or even simplified to try and reduce the pressures you might have been feeling either before the current climate, during the current climate, or you're continuing to feel. We know that it has been a very testing time, and the idea of process improvement automation is to try and alleviate some of that pressure and some of the stress. So obviously I've listed a few areas of impact that we've seen during the current climate, but there's also some of the other challenges that we're also seeing. And that's stuff like out-of-date systems, which is actually blocking your chance to improve. And often then comes shadow IT, which also causes confusion and issues with standardization and efficiencies. We've also got the lack of modern and efficient tooling. So, for example, with frontline workers, we often see they haven't got modern tools and they cannot access the right information when they're working. And that can have a massive impact on productivity and cause a waste in time when they're having to go to an office or a base to actually get that information. There's also time and resource constraints, obviously, with the economic concerns at the minute, and everyone's under pressure to streamline and cut costs. And you might see an inability to respond to the mass amount of customer requests or inquiries during this time due to changes or new demands. And obviously, a common one is paper-based and manual processes, which will have been broken in a way during this time because of the way that we're working. Also, industry disruption, which is causing some extreme changes in processes, and that might be an introduction of a new service or a new demand from the customers, which might need to completely change the way that you work. Obviously, as we discussed a minute ago around office closures and shift to remote working, we're having to adapt to the way we communicate and collaborate with colleagues. So from an in-person and face-to-face interaction, we're now moving more to remote interactions and making sure that we're still productive in that way. And obviously, professional development talent is scarce and expensive, and we often don't have the ability to have that access to that resource, and that's also stopping the ability to improve and develop solutions internally. And then if we go on to adapting the business processes, so this isn't exactly a roadmap, but it's a tried and tested approach or view to adapting your processes to really help you close the gap on growing demands and increasing technology innovation. So when we talk about modernise, we're thinking about things we can do. So around optimising IT performance, reducing backlogs, replacing and upgrading legacy applications and platforms, unifying data across a single platform, which we see as a real common issue across a lot of organisations where data is spread across the organisation on several platforms, and that just causes real inefficiencies and a lack of productivity. And reducing the time and cost by optimising everyday tasks with intelligent automation. Also, the look at simplifying the estate when it comes to application and tools that we use to provide a more standardised approach and a digital catalogue, which then will remove the confusion around shadow IT. And when we think about building a productive remote workforce, we're thinking about areas where we can empower the teams to effectively collaborate from home. We want to improve productivity by integrating applications and automating workflows, and ensuring we have security across all applications and devices. We also want to improve collaboration and communication throughout the organisation. We want to enable cross-departmental working and really break those barriers down. And we also want to improve transparency and accessibility of information and data. And finally, when we think about how to build a resilient supply chain, we consider things like how to optimise operations with intelligent tools and applications. We want to remove blockers and reduce single points of failures. And we want to enhance end-to-end visibility of the supply chain. And we also want to construct agile planning and distribution processes within that. Okay, so here are some of the example processes where we've helped clients over the last year. So if we take recruitment for an example, we've got a long process between arranging interviews to someone coming on board, and that can take months. Even the way the recruitment is managed, which is usually through a spreadsheet, and how interviews are scheduled, and then if a candidate is successful, the offer and approval process can take a lot of back and forth. And often contracts are sent either via post or email and requires a wet signature. So we've helped clients streamline this process through the use of things like Dynamics, DocuSign, Power Automate and Power Apps. All of the processes are managed digitally. We've got auto scheduling of interviews, we've got approval process from interviewers, and then digital versions of offers sent out to successful candidates. And then digital signatures are captured for that approval. And then we've often created induction portals for new starters to get up and running, so that we're not needing to have that person sat next to them with a checklist, making sure that they've done things that they need to get on board. And in turn, this can help with reducing costs. We can hire fewer people since there is less work to be completed. We also, if we get a good recruitment process internally, then the use of external agencies can be reduced, and that in turn can reduce costs. And then if we look at contracts, so if you're managing several suppliers and partners, contract management can be really onerous. So again, tracking those contracts are often done in spreadsheets and emails, and paper copies are kept as proof of approval. This can be all digitalised and managed through tools like DocuSign to be able to send out those contracts and also manage the process of approval. And then also if we're looking at getting sign off from leadership, so often this is again managed through emails and manual signatures on paper. The process can be lengthy, as we know that leadership members are often really busy and they need reminding to get that thing signed. And we've helped improve this process through automating the gaining of sign-offs through Power Automate and tools like DocuSign to gain a digital signature rather than having to print off the document and taking it to leadership for them to sign, which we know when it comes to paper that there's a very high risk of it getting lost. And with Power Automate, we can also send reminders. So if they haven't given their approval within a certain time period, that can automatically remind them, and that reduces the risk of it being forgotten about, and also reduce the need for the person to remind their manager. And this then in turn helps with the more effective use of manpower. So they can spend less time having to remind others of tasks that they need to complete, and also not having to manage that whole process manually. And this can all be done within the tools and managed through that. And then if we look at NDAs, so we know that a lot of organisations manage NDAs and they're usually sent by email or through post. then a record needs to be kept of that approval. And that could be in a paper format or in an email, but they both need to be stored. And sometimes I've seen it happen where it's sat in an individual's inbox, which can cause issues, obviously, if that person leaves. And this can be improved in a really simple way through, as I say, tools like DocuSign that will manage the sending of those NDAs and also store the signing and approval of that document. Then finally, if we talk about HR policies, so some organisations will need to manage and store acceptances of HR policies, which I've seen done in a number of ways. So from a spreadsheet to an email to a form with a checkbox, but they often don't get managed in a central place with a digital record of an individual's acceptance of that policy. And we've helped improve this process through a number of ways, depending on the organisational need. We've used Power Automate to create an approval process when an individual has read the policy. We've created digital forms to store approvals from employees, but the main thing is the management and storing of those acceptances from a HR perspective, making sure that it's not an onerous task for someone to individually manage. And overall, we've helped organisations with improved collaboration. So if we can create a space where team members can share files and receive alerts when documents have been updated and changed or assigned by one team member to another, this helps keep the whole team on the same page and improves communication. And overall, this leads to better overall job performance. So we see fewer manual errors and more focused work amongst employees. And in turn, you'll get more satisfied employees where they have the ability to use their skills and ability. When you cut out the more menial tasks for employees' jobs, they have time for the parts of the job they are skilled at. Okay, so to make automation successful, organisations should take care to build the right underlying foundation. While this usually includes the introduction of new technologies, changes in mindset and overall operating models are also paramount. Knowing where to start is questionably the most important phase. You may have already had a good idea, but if you're struggling, this is a model we can follow to help clients get started and drive momentum. And obviously, I asked you earlier to take a step back and look at areas of impact. And that's really where it starts. It's assessing what isn't working, what is broken, and what could be done better. So if we begin with an assessment is the best way to identify the repeatable processes employees currently undertake manually and the value that could be created in if the process were automated. In addition, it can provide you an idea of the value at stake through the automation activities. So the assessment will also look to consider the following things. So what's happened to your organisation, whether it's COVID or other potential factors like mergers or acquisitions, or a change in the industry, or a new compete angle. How has it impacted people's work, and has it caused any blockers or areas that really do not work? Or where have processes completely broken to remote working or changes in the way people work? We really need to think about it and take that step back to see the areas of impact. And identify areas under pressure and stress. So we know that people have had to do homeschooling or the kids have been off because their school years had a positive case. So there's always that change in the individual's environment. So we need to make sure that areas under pressure and stress are slightly relieved when we're looking at some of the manual processes or tasks. We need to analyse processes that are particularly manual and look to improve and automate those. And removing the repetitive tasks from a role allows the individual to focus on other tasks, which then in turn could lead to more innovative and creative work from those individuals. And that's really important to make sure that we're building that culture of more of innovation and creativity.
Thank you, Abby. So then I think when we talk about, again, where to start, the next stage for us is in that strategy. So we like to talk about creating a strategy and making automation a priority. So that includes things like forming your vision and making sure that your vision, makes sure your vision covers the entire organization and tying that vision back to your business goals and your objectives. We always say that you should set targets for both efficiency and cost saving, and you should really aim high. So even if it's something like a 30% cost saving, the higher you aim, the better, really. If you have existing digital transformation strategies, we also think that it's wise to link back to them and include process transformation as a key activity within that transformation. The other thing I like to talk to clients about is how we focus and how we think about process automation. I always tell clients, don't limit your thinking just to processes and just to automation. We need to start considering how we're going to implement those automation transformation activities, how the change is going to impact your operating models, and what skills we need to embed within your organization to make sure that automation and adoption is something that is sustainable and you can carry forward. Some things I like to talk about, and I think we in general as a business, we like to ask our clients to consider. You think about how you're going to empower the workforce. So you're going to be providing them with the tools like Power Apps and Power Automate, but are you going to give them the skills? So we need to make sure that we consider the skills and the human element so that our people benefit, basically. And we also like to talk about considering ways to improve business continuity. So starting to remove the dependency on buildings and paper, for example. What about virtual assistants? So using conversational AI for a virtual assistant, using some of the bots, delivering chat and help functionality to our people. Also consider, like we talked about earlier, digitalizing signatures to improve the turnaround times for things like NDAs and contracts and things like that with suppliers. And all of those things, again, are going to help you cut costs and save time. So you're going to address both the efficiency and cost angle. And then finally, don't forget that automation allows for 24/7, 365 services, which then removes a restriction on 9 to 5. So again, think big and think impactful. As part of the strategy, really, and kind of the next phase from a strategy is about roadmap, ownership, and mindsets. So the first stage is create a roadmap to implement your strategy. In the early stages, a focus on process automation can help you ensure that your progress is fast and that you see results early. And it will also cause probably minimal disruption to the business. But later on, we need to start thinking about the more sophisticated automation methods. So things like cognitive services and machine learning, so that the need for quick wins don't overshadow the importance of those longer term opportunities. So when we think process automation, we need to think about what's going to come later on. Process automation from a visual perspective, and the way we like to talk about it to clients, is it's almost the first stage on your automation journey. Building business ownership early, so having strong business leaders involved from the beginning of the change increases overall ownership and will really help to steer your transformation towards driving maximum business value. And if you also drive automation from an actual business profit and loss perspective, you're actually going to expand the scope beyond efficiency, and you're going to start to uncover the potential for developing additional services and changes in your business model. And finally, we talk about changing mindsets and prioritizing your workforce. You probably heard that a few times about the human element throughout this session so far. But the other factor that's necessary for your change to reach its full potential is that mindset shift. And that's the shift of minds throughout the entire organization. Achieving that requires you to introduce a change management approach that's actually tailored not just to the organization, but to your people as well. And then the next kind of stage of where to start is about leadership, and we like to talk about a centre of excellence. I think you'll also hear a centre of excellence from organisations like Microsoft as well. And what we talk about here is not depending on suppliers and partners and taking the lead yourself. So often companies will rely primarily on external help, especially organizations like Visual as a system integrator and other suppliers that will design and deploy kind of automation solutions or even products. But that approach really does create too strong a dependence on those parties, and it will delay or even stop altogether the internal capability development that you could have. Creating an automation center of excellence. So that's a recommended approach that we like to embed with our clients, and it's a way that you can ensure that you're building the right capabilities and that you have a centre of excellence that's staffed with your own resources, not external parties. What we the purpose almost of the Centre of Excellence is to govern your transformation efforts across the organisation, and it will ensure that you've got the right groups together and they're involved early on, and it also provides on-the-job training for employees. So many of you may have heard of kind of business or digital champions. It's a similar idea, but it's got it's almost like I say, a Centre of Excellence is more of a group think rather than individual champions across the business, and it is still like a large cross slice of people from the organisation in multiple different roles. It's also important that you decentralise responsibility. So whilst you may have a senior stakeholder in the business that's accountable for this initiative or for the ongoing initiative, decentralising responsibility for automation of processes is really important. The reason being, the majority of processes that you're going to automate are going to impact most, if not all, areas of the business. So you're going to need wider stakeholder engagement, and you're going to need employees from all those different groups to be educated and trained, because again, it's about improving their thinking around automation. And again, like we said at the start, it's about dispelling the myth that their jobs are at risk. That really isn't the case. This is all about empowering people to be more efficient and to drive more value back to the business. And it's also going to help people get more value from their job. So looking forward, a few key things really. So the goal of process automation isn't just to automate processes and save money. It's also focused on simplification of processes, improving accuracy, and helping businesses accomplish strategic goals whilst limiting that room for error. So looking forward, I have been asked this a few times, what is the future of business process automation? And I think to understand what we're going to see in the future, we just need to look at what's happened in the last 6 months. So really interesting, experts within the industry around business process automation or robotic process automation, as you may have heard it, they actually said that 2019 and 2020 were going to be huge years, but obviously due to COVID, I think attention turned to keeping the lights on for many organisations, and thus we expect that you're going to see a greater spike in the adoption of it in the coming year. But we also feel that because of the position that organisations are at, we're not going to see it at scale just yet. And to some extent, we have seen some of our clients across a number of different industries introduce some automation, but again, it's very much light touch and just not taking on a few small processes initially. So some of the things that we're going to see moving forward, education on the benefits and the technologies that can provide business process automation. Whilst it's already happening, that's one thing that's definitely going to increase, and it will also increase adoption. I think that and the growth of open source and the wider use of digital technologies will create greater economies of scale as well. Entry-level solutions. So I think entry-level solutions that are simple and cost-effective are going to provide many small businesses with an opportunity to invest and exploit automation as organisations shift more to agile working and things like rapid prototyping of those processes. For example, many businesses that use finance and accounting solutions in the business that either automate invoicing or make invoicing easier. And then once they become familiar with how those platforms work, they're going to become more willing to invest in a larger scale approach. And then automation, we feel, is best felt when it's focused on the user experience and how we can maximize the widespread usage within our organizations. I think the focus on user experience is aligned to agile and things like design-driven services. So naturally, we should see less project spend on technology and more spend on people. And again, change and adoption programs are going to be starting to lead with the human element. And then, Abby, do you want to quickly touch on changing culture?
Yeah. So as we know, and probably a lot of people that have been involved in change projects, culture is probably one of the hardest elements to influence and change. It's a complete change in mindset. And we always hear the phrase, well, it works fine this way, so why change it? And obviously we talked about the misconception around when we talk about improving processes and introducing automation, the automatic response is going to be, oh, it's going to take my job away from me. And it's very important that we actually make sure these changes are seen in a positive light and are actually sold to the employees as something that will enable them rather than take away from them. And removing the manual mundane tasks and allowing individuals to use their skills and knowledge to think more creatively and innovatively and provide their value to the organisation and themselves. So the culture we want to create is one of forward thinking, one of empowerment and openness, which allows the individuals to provide their suggestions and potential improvements and work with the organisation to continuously improve the ways of working and the services that you provide to your customers.
Excellent. Yeah, and then if we move on to automation at scale, so I touched on automation at scale in a previous slide, and this is something, like I say, I think I feel will take off in the coming years. So process automation and technologies that are based on artificial intelligence will bring significant benefits across a number of functions. And if I think about local and central government and what we've seen recently, there is a lot that they can learn from the advancements that are already being made in the private sector. So I think we all know that the public sector is under pressure to operate more efficiently, to serve citizens better, to provide more satisfying working experiences for employees. And the lessons from the private sector are showing that automation at scale has the potential to deliver against those purposes. But in order to get there, many public sector organisations really need to become more strategic in their approach, embracing new technologies and being more prepared to act at scale. So whilst I said previously, I think over the next 6 months, we're going to see some people start to dip their toes in the water and test some smaller processes. Once that's happened, there's a real need to start being a bit braver and starting to act at scale. And just an example on that, there's many private sector companies that have implemented automation at scale already that really are helping them reduce operating costs, improve the services that they're offering, generally work faster and cut out those mundane manual tasks and processes. So there is a leading oil company that cut 4 days from its financial close process, and that was automating over 10,000 tasks. Another insurer automated 120,000 transactions per month across 14 processes, and they actually realised a cost saving of about 30% per process. So 30% per each process and 14 of them. And then there's a large telecom operator that used automation processes for more than 400,000 transactions per month. And we really feel that the public sector can take a lot of lessons from these approaches. And then thinking about agile lean organisations. So private sector have been doing agile for quite a long time. The public sector are being pushed more and more towards agile working. I know there's a big, huge push from central government, and I'm working with more and more public sector clients now that are doing things in an agile way, which is great. And automation does involve, however, significant changes to existing roles and tasks, which again we are seeing being pushed. But there's a need to coordinate technology development within a wider change management process, because again, you are going to be changing roles, you're going to be changing the tasks that people perform. As many organisations have probably already discovered, there's certain development methodologies and delivery methodologies that just don't work in a complex environment, especially when you're thinking about automation. And the first of those kind of traditional approaches that's not going to work anymore in this setting is things like waterfall. So, you know, in a waterfall stance, you would do your analysis, your specification, your design, your coding, your testing, all those things, but you do them sequentially. And the problem with that is that automation projects delivered in that fashion, you're going to be plagued by delays, you're going to overrun on costs, you're going to find unexpected issues and limitations too late in the development. So it's experiences like that that are encouraging more companies that we're talking to pursue agile development approaches within their automation projects. And the reason being, there's a much stronger emphasis on those kind of tight-knit cross-functional teams. You've got more focused development effort and obviously things like continual testing. Agile really does provide highly successful, Agile is proving to be highly successful in addressing challenges with automation in the private sector. And again, we do see that increasing in the public sector. And then if we consider a thoughtful application of Agile, that really will help cut through a lot of the complexity that you might feel that there is with automation. And again, those willing to commit to change and to change at scale, we really feel like they're going to have the most benefit and get the most value from automation in the future. So that about wraps it up for this session. So there are some next steps. We do have a number of services, and this is just a very small section of those. But there are services like, say, like business process mapping or our DocuSign consultancy. But in addition to that, we've actually got a number of offers as part of NXT that will help you on that journey towards process automation. The first of which is a BPA accelerator, so business process automation accelerator. What that does is it will give you an overview of all of the possibilities and a lot of use cases for the Power Platform in the public and private sector. It will take you through that art of the possible. It will perform a discovery against 5 key processes that you have. It will then do a return on investment assessment. So what that will do, it will understand what you can look to gain from an efficiency and cost saving perspective by automating some of those processes. And then it will provide some recommendations on what products or technologies to use and how much effort might be involved in automating some of those processes. And again, offsetting that against what the ROI might be, something that we found is really valuable for our clients that maybe need to go through a business case to introduce some of these technologies. Power Pickup is another good one. So Power Pickup really helps organizations develop solutions quickly without the need of a lengthy project or any prior Power Platform experience. So it delivers a 1-day training session and then it will do a quick start solution developed from one specific process, and we can build out the automation of one of those processes within 5 days. And then we've got Adoption Consulting Lite, which is focused on DocuSign. So working with our partners DocuSign, this will provide you with a pilot of the DocuSign solution. It includes all the licensing that you need, but it gives you guidance on how to adopt it, and also will give you support for the solution as well. So if any of those are of interest, or if there's anything else you want to ask us about in the world of process automation, just please contact us at inquiries@ridgewell.com. And that takes us nicely onto any questions. So I'll just double check if we've had any. Doesn't look like I've had any questions. If you do have any, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A window. We'll give it we'll give it a minute, and then if nothing comes in, we'll close it there. Okay, it doesn't look like we're getting any questions, but obviously if you do have anything you want to ask, you can reach out to us at inquiries@ridgewell.com. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy the rest of the 3rd day of NXT Digital, and don't forget you can catch up on any content on our website. Thank you.